Okay, well, just get going. Good to see you all this morning. First thing on our agenda is just a kind of quick overview of the upcoming JPAC agenda for tomorrow. We're going to be receiving an update on Metro's MPO certification. Kind of gone through this process the other year. Were given some actions by the federal government that they needed to take. They've completed most of those, and so they're just going to be updating us on that. And then we're going to hear about this service development plan for the Cascadia high-speed rail, which is an effort being led by WashDOT, and as you all know, would connect Vancouver, BC, Seattle, and Portland. But then here this morning, we have Noel. Good morning, Noel. Good to have you here. And Noel is not talking to us about any of those things. They're going to be talking to us about the transportation demand management strategy updates.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we'll be on the agenda at JPAC in March and April, and so I wanted to come to you all earlier than that and just give an overview of what's to come there. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I'll introduce myself, Noelle Mickleberry, Senior Transportation Planner at Metro, and I work on our regional travel options team, which helps support TDM implementation in the region. And see if I can get this to share right. Are you seeing my presentation?
There it
Yes,
is.
yes. I see some nods. Okay, great. Sometimes I struggle with Zoom and sharing. So yeah, like I said, I'm here to share about Metro's regional TDM strategy or transportation demand management, what's included in the document itself, and the upcoming steps on the project with regional decision makers. We just wrapped up our public comment period on Friday, and we're currently incorporating input into the revised draft to bring to TPAC and JPAC in March. So we welcome your feedback today on the public review draft that was included in your packet. The regional TDM strategy fulfills an implementation action identified in the 2023 Regional Transportation Plan. And the 2023 RTP was the first RTP to include TDM specific policies that called for clear regional coordination and delivery of TDM programs and services. In addition, state level updates to the transportation planning rule and the updated mobility policy in the 2023 RTP call for local jurisdictions to elevate TDM in local planning processes. The TDM strategy proposes updates to TDM definitions, policies, and monitoring measures to inform the upcoming 2028 RTP process. The strategy also aims to align efforts in the region and guide the investment priorities for Metro's Regional Travel Options Grant Program. Each 3-year grant cycle, we award approximately $9 million of regional flexible funds to partners delivering travel options work in the region. And a quick note about Metro's RTO program as the primary way that Metro invests in TDM through grants, technical assistance, and regional coordination. And we take an all trips approach where we look at commute trips to work or higher education, community travel options, which are trips to essential needs or recreation, and safe routes to school, which supports student and family travel to K through 12 schools. This project has been underway for close to 2 years, with the first phase of the project conducting an in-depth TDM needs assessment in the region. Engagement has included focus groups, multiple surveys with regional TDM practitioners, and one with the public, receiving over 400 responses, helping us prioritize actions. A technical work group that helped inform the strategy development, including input on policy areas and supporting strategies. 2 TDM practitioner work groups or workshops that provided in-person feedback on the process and the policies. And then we've been sharing our progress at regional decision-making tables throughout the project, like TPAC, JPAC, coordinating committees, and technical advisory committees. And then lastly, we just wrapped up that 30-day public comment opportunity on Friday. I'm just going to quickly walk through kind of the major components of the strategy before I open it up for any questions. The first chapter of the strategy creates a shared definition of TDM for the region, clarifying what is and is not included in the TDM definition. There are 3 main elements that we've defined for the strategy, which includes TDM policy and planning, really setting the stage for successful implementation of TDM, TDM efforts are most successful when integrated into policy and planning processes. TDM programs, which focus on the behavioral interventions, education, incentive-based work needed to influence travel behavior and reduce single occupancy vehicle trips. And then lastly, TDM supportive design and infrastructure. And that includes the amenities that make choosing travel options practical, safe, comfortable, and attractive. These are outside the design of the streetscape itself and are really focused on enhancing the experience for travel options users. Chapter 2 of the TDM strategy covers the policy framework for TDM. I mentioned this a bit at the beginning, but it goes back to Metro's 2014 Climate Smart strategy, which identified TDM implementation monitoring measures alongside Policy 6, which is providing information and financial incentives to expand the use of travel options and reduce vehicle miles traveled. TDM programs are one of the 7 identified high and medium impact greenhouse gas reduction strategies from Climate Smart. In 2022, Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities rulemaking process I included a requirement for local transportation system plans to incorporate a transportation options element. This led to Metro's addition of TDM into the 2023 RTP with those new TDM policies and adding TDM into the definition of system completeness, a performance target identified in the regional mobility policy. An outcome of the regional TDM strategy is to propose updates to TDM-related components of the RTP. Appendix A of the strategy provides a detailed summary and redline version of all the proposed changes. This includes a revised travel options objective under the mobility options goal, a revised TDM concept and new TDM policies that we'll review briefly today, revised program descriptions, and proposed updates to those climate smart implementation monitoring measures. So I'm just going to walk quickly through our 5 proposed new policies. First policy is TDM policy planning and funding, strengthening and sustaining TDM implementation at state, regional, and local levels with supportive policies, planning, and funding. Policy 2, financial incentive programs, expanding access to existing financial incentive programs and establishing new programs to reach more people. Policy 3 is place and event-based programs, delivering programs that meet the unique needs of specific locations and communities. Policy 4, community-centered and inclusive programs, supporting TDM programs that prioritize welcoming and safe environments for people of diverse lived experiences, abilities, and identities. And then Policy 5, adaptive and resilient programs, designing flexible and innovative TDM programs that respond to a changing climate, service disruptions, emerging technologies, and the evolving needs of travelers. In Chapter 3 of the TDM strategy, each policy includes 5 supportive strategies with identified implementation roles for different scales of implementation, whether that be state, regional, or local. And I wanted to just share one partnership success of implementation already underway with Policy 1. We've been working closely with Clackamas County on their travel options action plan with an RTO grant over the last 3 years, which will provide that transportation options element as required by transportation planning rule, and also supporting an implementation pilot. This is a just recently installed transit and shuttle tracking screen at Clackamas Community College that the grant also supported. All right, Chapter 4 develops a performance measurement approach for TDM in the region. Our approach is to measure progress towards the TDM policies and strategies using analytic tools at the regional level to identify gaps, needs, and opportunities for investment. Our regional TDM performance metrics will track how TDM advances performance targets in the RTP and the climate smart strategy through 2 primary lenses. System completion, as I mentioned, it measures how local TSPs integrate TDM requirements, establishing TDM as a core component of a complete system. And then vehicle miles traveled, tracking VMT reduction to meet regional climate and emissions targets. New monitoring measures will reflect measuring the TDM activities with the highest mode shift capability. In addition to contributing to regional mobility and climate goals, TDM plays a critical role in reducing transportation barriers for communities across the region. Through our evaluation approach, the RTO program provides an opportunity to better understand and track progress in reducing those barriers and advancing equitable access across the region. The photo here on the right is of our recently updated Safe Routes to School walkshed map, which assesses every school in the region using 8 vulnerability indicators and a 1 mile unique walkshed around each school. We use this tool to assess what types of programs are serving schools with different vulnerability indicators and assessing gaps and opportunities for program expansion. Chapter 5 builds on the TDM policies and strategies to identify a metro-focused RTO work program framework, which will guide the work of our program through our 4 major activity areas, which include our grant program, representing the majority of our funding, RTO-led programming to fill gaps and pilot new concepts, regional research on travel behavior and evaluation of our progress toward regional outcomes, as well as our role as a regional convener to advance policy, develop partnerships, and support shared progress on TDM. The RTO program framework also identifies near-term priority policies and strategies for Metro, and the RTO team will develop a work program that's responsive to these priorities, as well as support the work of our partners leading TDM in the region. And lastly, here's just our upcoming timeline. We will be bringing the final TDM strategy to TPAC, JPAC, and Council for adoption in April after reviewing that revised draft in March. Beginning this spring, we'll be working closely with the RTO program's core and emerging partners who deliver key TDM services in the region to develop scopes of work and activities that align with these new policies. Those partners will begin work delivering key TDM services in alignment with the strategy this summer. Following that process, Metro staff will identify opportunities to support that partner work, fill gaps, or develop new concepts with our program development in the fall. And then there will be one additional RTO grant solicitation during the upcoming cycle in winter 2026 for our RTO general grants, which are planning and project focused and have a 2-year timeline. And with that, open it up to discussion and questions if there are any TDM policies or strategies that you want to learn more about, suggestions on the proposed approach, or any questions. And I'll just put my last slide of our contact information and the project website, and then
Thank you,
sharing.
Noel.
Yeah,
Thank you. That was
thanks.
great. Mayor Milch, please go ahead.
Thank you, Noel. That's a great presentation. And in the longer presentation that was in our packet, I really appreciated that you had a lot of examples of things that local cities were doing, or even some cities in different states were doing, that give us some ideas we can borrow and use in our own jurisdiction. So thank you for that research and including those great ideas. You mentioned this started, or the most recent part of this started back in 2023, and a lot of things have changed since then. I'm wondering what role, if any, did the state's congestion pricing, tolling on our freeways, did that ever have a role in this demand management strategy? And if it did, how have you had to change things with hopefully the elimination of that from state policy?
Yeah, so in the way the RTP identifies TDM, we have pricing as a separate set of policies. So that is kind of split from our TDM approach. Sometimes pricing is included in TDM, but for the RTP, that's a whole separate section. So we've been kind of operating outside of the pricing space, knowing that should that happen, there'd be opportunities to collaborate, or there'd be impacts, but the strategy was developed kind of separate from the pricing conversation.
Thanks for clearing that up. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Pamela.
I just always wonder when we're involving children in the process of thinking about transportation and crossing roads, etc. I don't seem to see any education of children or young adults, for that old adults for that matter, paying attention to how exactly to cross the street, to look for vehicles, to make yourself aware that you're smaller, it's bigger, you're gone, it's good. I see it too much. I see kids on, I say kids, but people on their phones looking down, not looking to see if a car's coming their direction, not putting their foot in the street before they look to see if there's a vehicle coming. And that person in the car is at fault as much, looking down, not looking up, not looking. I don't think we need some kind of a education program, some kind of an inspiration to make people put their phones down, look both ways before crossing, look ahead. I just don't see it being used as an education tool anywhere. My kids, my grandkids, me, myself, and people standing on the road. I'm like, oh, don't put your foot in the road. I'm used to heavy traffic. I'm in downtown Multnomah County, downtown Portland all the time. I see it. Trains too, for that matter. No, we need some kind of transportation is wonderful and great, but not when either you're hit or you're the one hit, and it's devastating to you. So I think uh, a big thing that needs to be brought out is educating people, service announcements. I don't know, but I think we tend to blame a lot on traffic and not a lot on responsibility for your own self and with your foot in the street. So my 2 cents worth. And bikes included. I see bikes all the time outside of their little white line that's designed for them to stay in. And I understand that there's glass and rocks and whatever, but that's your lane. We paid for it. Get out there and get a broom, buddy. Sweep. I don't know. These are things that when I commute or I look at transportation, I find this an important feature that I think is we're worried so much about safety and cones and narrowing roads, but we're not teaching the children, especially, how to cross the road. We did it in our classrooms when we were young. We had safety patrol though, so it made it a little easier because you really learned. But anyway, just something I wonder that could be included in focus on any strategy going forward for transportation. And that's it. Mhm.
So, Noel, if a jurisdiction had an idea like Pamela's to educate, youth, what kind of process would we go through to work with this program? Are the grants available for um, that kind of
Yeah.
work?
Yeah, I'll just say that in our Safe Routes to School program in general, education for kids is kind of central to that, and I think we have a real opportunity with the regional program to have what we've been trying to do is have pedestrian safety education for every classroom in the region. We're working towards that, but it can be, really simple, and we have coordinators now after we've been had the program for about 5 years that there's coordinators in almost every district getting it in, elevated even to be a requirement in PE classes. Those are the kinds of things we're working on. And then I saw a comment in the chat too about walking school buses. We've been supporting expansion of, adult-led support for kids because even if we do educate kids, kids are kind of maybe not paying attention in the same way that an adult could be and keeping them safe. And so we've really been supporting that kind of support at schools as well and we have kind of these small grant programs for individual schools for support of walking school buses. Any school can apply, and we provided about 25 micro grants and then 30 kind of toolkits out to schools last year, and we're going to continue to offer that every school year. So just a few other things we've been working on in that realm.
Could Council Price, see your hand, but real quick, since you're talking about the grants, can you just so a school can apply for a grant? I assume a city, community organizations as well, who can apply for grants?
Yeah, so our large grants that are kind of on a 2 or 3 year cycle are open to any local jurisdiction, community-based organization. And as I mentioned, the next one that'll be open will be in the winter, kind of January 2027. But then we do our small grants, which are $5,000, and those can really go to like get materials and services to help support a specific need. Those are open every year in the spring. And then we have a subset of that available that are $500 only for schools. Those are just kind of to give schools a boost with a small $500 grant. So the 5,000 are available to jurisdictions and community-based groups as well. So that'll be opening up in June this year.
And how large is the pot for the grant cycle?
It's $9 million for 3 years. That's about 3 million annually, but we award some of that for ongoing 3-year programs, as well as larger 2-year programs too. So it's kind of split into chunks.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councilor
Yeah.
Pratt, thank you for waiting.
Uh, oh, no problem. I just had a quick comment that speaking from the local level, like policies 3 through 5 in particular, I really appreciate that you're looking at the different needs of different communities and have that flexibility, and also that this is adaptive for new technology and future changes that we can't predict. So I just thought I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Pratt. All right. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Noel? All right. Well, Noel, thank you so much for being here this morning. We appreciate this update and information.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay. All right, folks. Let me get back up to the top here. Okay. Well, this was the public comment opened through last week. Guess we missed the boat on that one. But we give our comments here. All right, TPAC updates. Who is this? Jeff and Will. Good morning to you both.
Good morning. I think Will's got this one. Thank you.
Good morning, councilors, commissioners, and mayors. Will Farley, the representative for cities of Clackamas County on TPAC. I'll be up front. I missed the last meeting due to a conflicting meeting. Laura Turway with Happy Valley stood into me, but I can speak to some of the highlights of what happened. I did get to watch some of it. We got our fatal crash update that showed about 8 fatal crashes in the month of January, 3 of which occurred in Clackamas County. We got an update on the 2023 Regional Transportation Plan amendments that included the locally preferred alternatives for 3 transit projects, on the one on 82nd Avenue, the one on TV Highway, and the Montgomery Park streetcar. It'll come back in front of TPAC in the next meeting for a vote. And then we got an update on the Cascadia High-Speed Rail Service Development Plan, which will have future updates at milestones at TPAC and JPAC. ODOT, even though they're going to a 10-year capital investment plan, they still have one more STIP to go through, the 2027 to 30 STIP, that showed about $2.9 billion going in. It's going to have a few reductions due to their budget issues that are coming up. Let's see. They're now out for public comment on the STIP, and that's until March. They will review they will have the public review of the STIP, and it'll go in front of the OTC later in 2026, and they will coordinate with the Region 1 Act and other regional partners. Metro also came in with the Regional Trail System Plan update to kind of highlight the refinements, trail alignments, and network connections, and how that's consistent with regional plans. They will advance this update for Metro Council consideration in 2027. Jeff, I turn to you to see if I missed anything important or any feedback from that meeting.
I think you captured it well, Will. And as you mentioned, the LPA, the 3 LPA projects that are going to be amended into the RTP. I think that's coming back April 6th. So not quite next meeting, but very soon. So there's a long window there for discussion. So with that, happy for any questions if we can. And I think I see Laura over in the attendees as well, who attended the last TPAC meeting. But we're happy for any questions if you have any.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. So what exactly are they amending? These 3 projects, they're not in the RTP?
So they are, yeah, sorry about that. So they are existing in the RTP, as they are kind of larger projects that have been in the pipeline for a bit. And what they're now amending is the LPA to reflect that there has been the locally preferred alternative, the LPA. So it's a bit of an update to those existing projects.
I see. Now, the RTP doesn't address or reflect the funding, does it? Or does it?
I believe to the best of the ability of those large projects, they do reference the likely types of funding, but it would not necessarily be the most actively updated document, as it's only updated with periodic reviews. So if there are more fluid or more up-to-date funding changes, they would not necessarily be reflected in the RTP itself. So I think the RTP does describe the larger funding mechanisms that are likely, but not necessarily the most up to date.
Do you by any chance have any up? I mean, it seems like we've been talking more about the 82nd Avenue project. That seems like it's, continuing to move forward, but we haven't heard much about the TV Highway or the Montgomery Park project since we did that rough allocation. Are there any kind of updates on where those are at?
Yeah, I'm not aware of major updates. Welcome. I think John's on the call with TriMet if he wishes to chime in on those two. TV Highway on the western side of the region could be a larger project, and so they are trying hard to kind of manage it to the scale for that corridor on the west side. For Montgomery Park streetcar, I'm not aware of any kind of nuanced updates besides that it's a relatively short extension of the existing streetcar system. It gets pretty expensive because there is a lot of current fabric there in the urban environment. And so that one does get fairly expensive for being a small segment. But I'm not really aware of any timely updates to share with you on those.
Okay. No, thanks, Jeff. Anyone, any questions for Jeff and Will? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate the updates. All right. Okay, we're gonna move on to MPAC and the upcoming agenda. Well, actually, I mean, the issue we're going to talk about this morning here with Aaron and Andy and Jamie, we heard at the last MPAC meeting, but later this month, MPAC's going to be talking about the WEA Industrial Lands proposal and then the Economic Development Council work group, which I'm guessing kind of ties into this conversation we're having this morning on the economic development conversations in the region. So we're glad to have Andy and Aaron, as well as Jamie, here this morning to talk to us about this. I'll let you guys take it away.
Great, Jamie, did you want us to kick it off? Fantastic. So thank you so much, Andy Shaw, Director of Government Affairs at Metro. I use he and him pronouns. I'll let Erin introduce herself as well. And Jamie C4 staff, are we loading up a presentation?
I can, unless you would prefer to drive.
It would be great if you could do it. Thanks, Jamie.
Okay, I'm gonna pull it up.
Hi, everybody. I'm Erin Key. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Urban Policy and Development Manager at Metro, so I work primarily in land use.
So I'll kick it off. And sorry for those of you, the couple of you who've heard this presentation before, but maybe you'll hear something new. So as we sit in this moment, you all know of deep economic certainty. And at the beginning of a new year, we thought it'd be a good time to begin a discussion about sort of the history of economic development efforts in the region and economic development. As the chair said, it's going to be a topic of conversation here at MPAC, at Metro, the state legislature, many other places. So we just want to give a high-level overview of economic development efforts in the region. It'll include some emerging challenges, the role of various partners, including Metro, and approaches to creating more job-ready land, as well as tools to recruit and retain jobs in the region. I had a snazzy slide that you could look at while we're doing that. We'll just keep going because I know you're limited on time. Yeah.
Briefly to interrupt, I am struggling to access your presentation. Are you able to pull it up from your end?
Erin, do you have it handy?
I did not have it handy, but let me work on it.
Okay, I'll keep going. So you all know there's many important aspects of our economy. You all need to go get groceries. We go to the bank, we shop at retail stores. Those are all really important parts of creating quality of life and a strong community, but they're what we call a part of the circular economy. So it's stuff that just circulates around locally. Local and state economic development strategies usually focus on the traded sector, so jobs and economic activity that brings wealth into the region. So we're doing stuff here, but we're selling it elsewhere, rather than just circulating resources and wealth around inside the region. So not only does that bring resources and income, wealth to the region, but traded sector jobs tend to be higher paying, what we call family wage jobs. So that's what usually economic development strategies are targeting. In addition to employing people and bringing that wealth into the region, these jobs can help grow our local property tax base and boost state income tax revenue. So I'm gonna kick it over to Aaron.
One sec, I'm really close. So what I'm going to
Able
talk
to
about,
access it now.
Jamie, you have it.
Yeah, give me like 60 seconds and I can have it
oh,
up.
actually,
Thank
I think
you.
I
Sorry
just
for the
did.
lack of coordination on that between us.
Are we ready? Can you see it? I think I just did it.
Yes, we can see it.
It's not really in presentation mode though, is it? Okay, how does that look? So what I wanted to talk about is just kind of reflecting some of the statistics you've been seeing. You've seen these in the news. It's really not good news. We are in a period of economic insecurity. You can see that we haven't bounced back from the pandemic in the same way that other cities and even cities our own size have. So you see San Francisco, Portland, Milwaukee, Washington D.C., Virginia Beach down there on the bottom, who have continued to lose jobs over this period. And then I'll also just point out that we've been seeing it decline kind of in new areas in Washington County where we're not used to seeing those kind of declines. We're seeing them in Washington County more deeply and in all of the counties around the region. I do want to point out that I have seen some positive statistics recently about continued people coming to the region and moving into Happy Valley. And to highlight, since we're in Clackamas County right now, there are some highlights around the region, but overall we're in a different kind of economy than we've been in a really, really long time. And so that really pushes us to think about things differently. Andy, I'll pass it back to you.
So Metro is not the region's economic development agency, but we do play a number of really important roles in supporting the local economy. So tourism in Greater Portland in 2024 was a $5.5 billion industry, and Metro plays a key role with Travel Portland and operating our convention center in bringing major group business to the region, boosting tourism. The measure we use there is bringing heads in beds. So conventions that bring 3, 4, 5, 6,000 people over the course of a convention to spend their dollars here in our region. The Oregon Zoo remains a top paid attraction in the state, bringing 1.7 million people to visit annually. Our region's incredible access to nature is sometimes termed the second paycheck for our region's residents. And many of you all invest in parks and natural areas. We of course have our Parks and Nature program to invest in keeping nature close to us. And that's an additional element that we hear helps attract talent to move to the region. Metro's investments from the housing bond support more than 3,000 construction jobs each year. I've been told recently that the majority of construction cranes in the region are currently over projects that are funded with the Regional Affordable Housing Bond. And then our long-range planning and forecasting work, in addition to local grants to cities, counties, support growth in existing commercial corridors and also future growth outside the UGB. We've worked as a convener and a partner to secure job growth, advanced land readiness, and major transportation initiatives. Aaron's going to talk next about some of those partnerships.
Yeah, so this is not an exhaustive list, but we have for a long time worked in partnership with a variety of different organizations in the state. who focus on economic development and job growth, as well as regionally, in particular with Greater Portland Inc., which is a partnership, which works in partnership with Metro on a cycle to produce the economic strategy for the region, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And of course, we're working with chambers and cities and other nonprofits who focus on the local economies. But as Andy was talking about, we do a lot of we have a lot of different roles. So I think it's helpful to reflect on the roles that Metro has in general, where the areas, sometimes people like to think of this as like our lane, how Metro stays in its lane. So these tend to be the elements in which Metro excels. We're great at data and analysis. We're known for our convening and bringing different groups together to talk about tough issues, providing technical assistance, and legislative advocacy. So these are just some of the examples that we highlighted in terms of roles that Metro can play in economic development and where we have in the past. This one's going to be hard for you to see online on your screens, I know, but it is in your packet. This presentation is in your packet. So if you want to, you can take some time. But this was just an exercise to take each of those roles, which you see over listed on the left in each different color, and to identify some of the specific things that Metro has done in those areas to just highlight and explain what that, that kind of role means. I find it very helpful to think about these roles, particularly when talking about what Metro should do going forward to address the situation that we're in currently.
So back over to me.
Yep.
Yep. So shifting to land readiness, as a part of our long-range planning, we designate areas of the region that are intended for employment growth and job concentration. Cities and counties, you all know, of course, are responsible for zoning, for permitting, local infrastructure in those areas. This map shows the Title IV employment areas in the very light green, which is a little hard to see on the screen. The industrial areas in light blue and regionally significant industrial areas in the darkest blue. As we have sought to attract jobs over the last 25 years, we've encountered a number of challenges in getting land ready for development. Let's go to the next slide. So in the early 2000s, looking to add land to the UGB for jobs, Metro made expansions south of Sherwood, between Tualatin and Wilsonville, south of Oregon City, east of Gresham, and most notably in the Damascus area. None of these areas developed over the next decade due to various challenges. Those include voter opposition to annexation in the case of Sherwood, no prior planning to identify infrastructure needs and costs in every case, no city in existence to oversee planning and development in the case of Damascus, the lack of agreement between cities about the nature of the growth, jobs on the one hand or residential on the other, especially for the lands between Wilsonville and Tualatin. And today, some of these areas still remain unannexed and undeveloped. Let's go to the next slide. So as a region, we learned many lessons from these experiences, and Metro convened processes to address many of the challenges over time. We established the construction excise tax to help fund concept and comprehensive planning for new areas ahead of considering expansions. So learning from that lack of pre-planning, we collectively got together, cities, counties, Metro, and agreed to this new tax to fund planning. That fund now also helps pay for planning inside the UGB. It was established just to help plan those areas that had been added and to plan for future expansions, and now helps fund planning inside the boundary. We require that cities come forward and express interest in planning a new area before considering expansions into that area, given the experience in all those different areas, but in particular the experience in Damascus, not having any government stood up yet to consider how to plan for and convene folks around that growth. And after a lengthy engagement process and examination of data and exploration of infrastructure needs and capacity, broad public input, Metro and the three counties agreed to a set of 50-year reserves. This identified places that we all agreed made sense to consider for urban growth, and also areas that should be protected from urban development. So Metro's role was to identify the urban reserves, the places that could be considered for development, and the counties identified the rural reserves. Another step that we took, we convened regional partners to develop and propose to the state legislation to give authority to the region to consider UGB changes, quote, mid-cycle, so in between the 6-year review, the normal 6-year review of urban growth. One last innovation I would mention is the UGB land swap that we made in 2023, which is removing lands from the existing UGB, in this case, east of Oregon City and out in the Damascus area, in order to then add lands to the UGB, in this case, on the west side of Tigard. So Tigard had gotten resources from the construction excise tax, planned the area. We determined there was not development potential likely in the next 20 years in the areas that were removed, and added the areas in Tigard, which is now working on the comprehensive planning. In that case, it was to consider housing growth and housing capacity, not jobs, but that tool exists as well on the industrial lands and job side. All right. Next slide, please. Back to reserves. At the core, urban and rural reserves, the agreement gave us the ability to consider urban growth in areas that were previously not allowed to be considered because they were tier 1 farmland. So very high value farmland. The previous land use legislation that we were governed under as a region didn't allow us to even consider those lands. That's partly what had us move out to Damascus in the early 2000s. But that establishing urban reserves would allow us to make expansions out in North Hillsborough for large lot industrial land, which before the rural reserves was not allowed. So establishing that full suite of urban reserves and rural reserves, all 3 counties, Metro agreeing, it was not clear along the way that we were all going to get to agreement and that we would end up with a set of reserves that we could then work with. In the end, though, all 4 governments agreed. I will just recall an incredible meeting in Washington County where the Washington County Commission and the Metro Council met one by one, three or four times, going back and forth, trading back maps and working on the agreement on exactly the right areas to designate. Even after that agreement between the 3 counties and Metro, the courts weighed in, and they found that Washington County's designation of rural reserves didn't stand up to scrutiny. So they threw out the entire urban and rural reserves system, and that threw the whole system into disarray. And it would have nullified Metro's UGB expansion in North Hillsborough that was dependent upon the existence of rural reserves. So the legislature stepped in and approved a different map of urban and rural reserves just for Washington County, which then, in addition to the Multnomah County Metro and Clackamas Metro urban and rural reserves, becomes the system that we work under today. So part of the urban rural reserves are in state statute in Washington County, and part of them, the rest of them, are local control between Metro and the counties. All right, one more slide there. Another set of lessons we took from the experiences of the 2000s was that even with a willing city and land, getting land ready for development requires infrastructure like roads and pipes. You all know we have a dearth of financing options for infrastructure, one of the things we are challenged with every day. So Metro helped to lead a group of advocates to establish the Oregon Industrial Lands Program. We succeeded in getting legislation put in place back in 2013. And then sought to get that program funded over many years. Updated the program legislatively in 2017, but it really took the last few legislative sessions to get the state to invest small amounts in this Jobs Ready land program. The legislature's now invested $10 million 2 different times in a couple sessions, and the governor is proposing $40 million more in this short session to go into that pot. So success, but it's been slow and smaller amounts compared to many of the costs that we face to get these lands ready. A similar coalition led by Metro and the Port of Portland successfully got a statewide brownfields cleanup tax credit put in place. And the coalition's been able to secure around $36 million in investments from the state over the past decade to fund statewide brownfield cleanup programs. And I'll just note statewide. So that's not a whole lot of money to go across the state. Every jurisdiction across the state has areas that need brownfield cleanup to be redeveloped. All right, next slide. So next slide. Another tool here. Oh, I think you're gonna talk about the freight strategy.
I'm gonna let you go, Andy. It's okay. You're really good at it. Yeah, let me pick up a couple of slides. I'll talk about these. These are really, we want to highlight just some other work in the areas of economic development. This is the cover of our regional freight strategy that was updated in 2025. So Metro updates this plan regularly, works with businesses and freight interests to talk about the transportation system and how it supports the movement of goods and services. Um, I'm also going to highlight the economic value atlas. If you haven't discovered this, you can follow this evatool.oregonmetro.gov. It's a really fun tool to learn about different parts of the region, provides a lot of economic data and information. So it's an online resource. You can go in there and zoom into specific census areas and collect information about those areas to help with planning for future job growth. So that's one of those examples of technology, data, resources, and making those available. And then Andy, this one's back to you.
Okay, so is this the toolkit?
Yeah.
So just real quick, you can go on our website and check out this industrial lands toolkit. It contains nearly 30 distinct financing, land aggregation, mitigation tools, as well as case studies for how some of these development and redevelopment tools have worked, have been used. Let's go on to the next slide. Um, so the state also plays a really key, important role. Business Oregon has been a partner with us in a lot of those legislative discussions, and a lot of our advocacy has been aimed at helping get them more tools. We talked about many of the tools listed here. Would encourage you to go to their site. A couple additional ones are their certified shovel-ready program and the Enterprise Zone Tax Incentive Program. All right, back to you, Erin.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of wrap us up by just revisiting what a little bit of what Andy was talking about at the beginning. You can see over time and looking back at our history, the ways that economic development has been woven into Metro's programs. Andy said at the beginning, we talk here with you all a lot about transportation and about land use, but travel and tourism are a significant part of what Metro does, and our visitor venues and the zoo. And obviously, these are important tools for both the attractiveness of our region to visitors, but as well as the livability and its attractiveness to employers and employees. But it also is important to highlight what we've been talking about specific to transportation investments, that freight strategy and RTP and how that supports job creation, the housing bond resources and projects. You remember that Andy said at the beginning, that's some of the construction that has continued to happen over the last couple of years and where we are seeing significant employment growth in supporting the housing bond and the building of those units. So that's been an important piece to think about. Housing and transit-oriented development are areas in which Metro is putting funds into the construction industry as well as supporting grants. Andy spoke about a couple of them with the construction excise tax, but also our parks bond and parks levy have large-scale community vision grants. And of course, you're familiar too with our transportation grants. These getting money out into the world, supporting small businesses and nonprofits help keep our economy running too.
So just real quick, being cognizant of time, thank you, Jamie. We face some really significant economic challenges. Those are real. We also have a lot of strengths to build off of. GPI cites the robust network of skilled talent in our region as an amazing strength. More than half of the city of Portland's residents have a bachelor's or higher degree, while about 45% of the region's residents have the same, which distinguishes us from many regions. A lot of high education and talent. We've planned out regional town centers and regional centers, commercial corridors. They really help anchor a lot of the work that you do to create amazing neighborhoods and improve walkability scores across the region, per the discussion that you were just having earlier. Um, Between city-owned, hundreds of city-owned parks, 20,000 acres of natural areas that Metro owns and operates, we have an amazing access to nature across the region, which is not something that a lot of regions can boast. And we're blessed today with an array of arts, sports, and other cultural amenities that help us make this a place people want to come to and stay. All right, back to Aaron for our last slide, I think.
Yeah, we'll just close it up real quick. This takeaway is really, I think, our call to action. It's important at this challenging time that we align our resources and that we're all rowing in the same direction. So I think our coordination with one another is really important at this time. And there's great opportunities both at the state level with the governor's focus in the development of the Prosperity Council. Metro Council has taken this work very seriously and has put together a work group to focus on what Metro can do in this area. I mentioned GPI, Greater Portland Inc., who on a particular cycle needs to update this comprehensive economic development strategy. I think the time couldn't be better for focusing on a regional strategy. So there's an opportunity, as well as great work that we has been happening at the Westside Economic Alliance, Industrial Land Work Group, and at cities and counties all over the region. So we look forward to being part of the conversation and being at the table for how we work together on this. Thanks for having us here to present this information, and we're happy to stay for questions as long as you've got time.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Andy. Good presentation. All right. Does anyone have any questions, Mayor Milch?
Thank you for a great presentation. At the beginning, Mayor Buck introduced us talking about regional conversations. There are multiple conversations that go on around these topics at various levels. And at the city, state, or the city and county level, mostly we have nonpartisan governments. But once the state gets involved, partisanship sometimes plays a role in these discussions and strategies. I'm wondering if you could identify some of the areas in economic development strategy where we get a strong bipartisan buy-in to things that we do, and what are some of the areas that are real sticking points between the two parties?
Yeah, great question. I, of course, am a nonpartisan public sector staffer, so I want to be a little careful with you all. But I would say there are some interesting breaks across party lines as we've worked in this area for a long time. Tax credits to attract companies to make investment has tended to be something that classic Democrats have been less interested in, and Republicans have been more interested in over time. Brownfields has been something that has engendered strong bipartisan support, partly because every community across the country has an old gas station or a dry cleaner or a manufacturing place that used something that's down on the ground. So every district in the state has the need to do brownfield cleanup. When you start getting into the high tech sector, thinking about advanced manufacturing, there's an interesting coalition there that is created because attracting more high income, high wage earner jobs improves the state's economic situation directly. The challenge that we've had, and it's a bipartisan challenge, is getting legislators to be concerned and care about the local challenge of getting land ready. So this distinction between cities and counties, districts are responsible for the permitting, the annexing, the financing of infrastructure, and there aren't many tools to help front money or even loan money to help achieve those purposes. But the outcome when we land jobs on those properties is state income tax, much more so than property tax revenue. So the benefit of all that local work, all that hard work, all the community discussions about, do you want more traffic on that road? Do you want this kind of industrial use near residences? All that challenge that you all face has not been really fully recognized by state legislators in helping with the financing, helping with the permitting processes, et cetera, et cetera. So I think our job collectively is to continue to get across to state legislators how all of that local work helps them with their school funding conversation, helps them with their health and human services conversation. So that's a part of the work that we will continue. And really there, it's not a partisan issue. That's an issue of direct connecting the dots with legislators, and that's the work we've been doing for the last couple decades. I hope that's a helpful
Thanks. That's
initial.
great analysis. Thanks very much.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a great point. That's a really good question, Mayor Mulch. And just like recently with the state focused on the Moda Center, the arena, renovation project, it just took note that, I mean, the both local leaders and then state leaders as well. It came out the governor with all this support, but there was not like where was it's like they left out the Republican leadership. It's like this huge, very important thing, but it was only leaders in the Democratic Party, and I, who knows? To say the Republican leaders say, "Oh, this is the worst idea we've ever heard." I don't know, but it just feels like they're so disjointed, and if it's something so important to the region. I mean, none of us would move something forward on our city councils unless we had kind of the whole group, behind it, and we were working together on it. So just, I don't know. I couldn't help but think maybe they were just being excluded. So, not great. But I think, Metro, in addition to all the data, capabilities, you all have also leading the conversation on housing, and how that ties into economic development, so important. Just recently, the local jurisdictions, we've been receiving the updates on the changes to how we're calculating the housing needs analysis, and how that will impact our housing production strategies. But all of these tools, around the urban growth management, I mean, one of the biggest changes, at the local level is how we're allocating the housing production uh, between different levels of affordability, and yet at the same time, like the money is just completely, gone for affordable housing production. So it's like, how do we all do it? And the state's not really coming in with any solutions, just numbers. Produce this, figure it out.
Expectations.
So it's a good, it seems like there's lots of good work between Metro and local jurisdictions we can do to continue moving all these important goals forward.
And the more we can work together with the resources that we bring for planning and you all at the local level to plan out strategies for the transportation routes, strategies for getting land ready, strategies for putting the infrastructure out to new housing areas, the more we'll be able to attract the market to then make investments in those places. And I think just being able to tell that story to the legislature of we need the tools to be able to accomplish those steps, and we need the state support to do that. That should be an easy bipartisan message, but it's up against all the other priorities that, of course, and you just mentioned a few that the state is struggling with. So,
Well, thank you, Andy and Aaron. Really appreciate the presentation. I want to make sure we have time to switch over to Miss Stasny here.
thanks for the time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jamie. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Mayor Buck. Good morning, C4. Nice to see you all today. Here today to talk with you about the Westside Economic Alliance's work around industrial land readiness. And it ties in nicely with what Andy and Aaron just shared about the larger work that Metro is doing. So I'll go ahead and share screen here and we'll jump in. I'll try and be quick so we can get done in plenty of time. Can you see my presentation? Yes. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. So we're actually giving this presentation later this morning at MTAC. So that's exciting. So getting a sneak peek. So first, I just want to start by saying you're probably wondering why the Westside Economic Alliance, why I'm presenting on behalf of the Westside Economic Alliance. Just want to share that Clackamas County is a member of the Westside Economic Alliance. Many of our cities span the west and the east side. So we are an active member in this group and have a lot of good collaboration with them around important topics like this one. So Westside Economic Alliance has always been engaged in industrial land conversations, but really started to ramp up after the last urban growth boundary expansion process back in 2024. I sit at the table for MTAC along with Laura Turway and others from Clackamas County, and there was a lot of conversation around that table and the impact table about frustration, a mismatch behind what the buildable lands inventory showed was available for industrial land and what our private sector partners actually considered buildable industrial land. There was a mismatch there, and there was a lot of confusion and frustration. And this isn't the first time that's happened, but that really started to come to a head during this last process. And so there was a recommendation around the MTAC table to put together a work group, including a lot of private sector partners, to really talk about this methodology that Metro uses and understand why that mismatch occurs and if there's something we can do to work together to resolve it. Metro, during the last UGR, found that they didn't need to add any more industrial land for the next 20 years because they had plenty of it. They did end up adding land with a unique process out in Sherwood for a large lot industrial. So they kind of found a workaround to their methodology to be able to justify the addition of those lands, but they didn't show a regional need for that land. So after we went through the MTech process and then MPAC also made the recommendation for a work group, I worked with Elizabeth at WEA to put this work group together so we could start having this conversation. It was really important to us that we included the staff from Metro, so we're all having one conversation. As Andy and Aaron were saying, we're not going anywhere if we're not working together, right? We have to figure out how to work together to get through these issues. We set up a goal to review the methodology used by Metro to count those lands and to really dive in and educate ourselves about that. So the work group itself, let's see if I can move to the next slide. There we go. Here's a list of all the folks who participated in the work group. As you can see here, we had some amazing people, the folks you need around that table if you're going to resolve these tricky technical issues. We had a lot of private sector partners who are actually practitioners out there working every day, trying to make market realities happen, right? Make some growth happen in our economy. We also, as I said, had staff from Metro at the table the entire time. Conversations were not always easy. A lot of finger pointing tends to happen when we talk about methodology and frustrations over past years. But I want to compliment Metro staff. They stayed in the room the whole time. We built a lot of trust through this process by being able to have honest conversations. So Aaron, who was just here presenting, Ted Reed, and David Tetrick from Metro really were our key partners in this. We also had presenters from DLCD, so we brought in the state level. So we're seeing all the different layers of the requirements there. And I want to give a shout out to Commissioner Helm, who sat on this committee before she received her appointment to become a commissioner. She's been very involved in this work from the beginning. So thank you for all your support and work on this, Commissioner. So what did we learn? You can see this really messy whiteboards. We got in the room together, a lot of smart people, a lot of experience, and just started talking. What's going on? Why are we so stuck? And why can't we come up with the industrial land we need to meet the market needs? We immediately recognized there's so much with economic development that's so much bigger than industrial land. We could spend all day just spinning, talking about all the topics, but we really tried to zero in on industrial land availability and readiness so that we could actually make some meaningful progress. So we came up with a list of recommendations. We met for many months. I think it was February to September. We met for a long time. We had a lot of great in-depth conversations. We met monthly. Elizabeth and the team convened us, and a lot of education happened, a lot of aha moments, and a lot of connection of like, this is what I see from the private side, this is what I see from the public side, and coming together to be able to bridge some gaps, which is always a good feeling. So we came up with a list of recommendations, which we hope to bring forward. During this process, as Andy and Aaron were saying, we learned that Councilors Gonzalez, Simpson, and Lewis had started up a work group at the Metro Council level, focusing on economic development and what Metro can do for economic development, what they're already doing and what they can do. So we stayed in touch with Metro staff throughout this process. We developed a memo of our findings and brought them in to staff at Metro, as well as to those 3 Metro counselors, and just started having conversations about where we aligned and where there were differences. What we found is a lot of our recommendations are aligning with the direction that Metro Council is heading. They had a work session at the end of January. They have another one coming up. They're working on moving forward some concepts that are very much in alignment with what we're asking them to do. We have some extra things that we'd like to see them do that we'll continue to advocate for, and I'll talk more about those in a moment. So recommendations to Metro. First, We propose that Metro adopt a problem statement, and this is something that Metro staff are working on as well. It's important that we all get on the same page about what the challenge is, and that helps us be able to figure out a solution to solve that problem. So we drafted a problem statement really around, very specifically around this mismatch between what the market believes is buildable and what the methodology at Metro acknowledges as buildable for industrial land in our region. So really getting into that maybe a little bit wonky technical space of, hey, we have a mismatch here and we need to figure out what we can do to resolve this so that we can have a system that is transparent and works. So this is the problem statement we developed. We're still working with Metro staff to see if we can incorporate some of this language in the problem statement that they're working to bring forward to their council. Second recommendation. We talked about a lot of things. One of those things being a lot of jurisdictions have trouble with economic development. It's difficult to fund, it's difficult to find staff. We have a wonderful economic development program here at Clackamas County. It's been well funded, led by Laura Edmonds. They've got a great team. They're doing great work. They're getting grants out to community. They're making meaningful impact. What I've noticed is I've started to pay more attention to this area of work at the local jurisdictions is we are very lucky at Clackamas County because we have that leadership and we've invested in that team over the years. Many other jurisdictions do not have that, and they need more resources so that they can actually have staff to be able to focus on these things. So we're interested in seeing how Metro might be able to support staff being hired at local jurisdictions to have that lens on economic development. We also found out during this process that there is a mid-cycle UGB expansion opportunity for jurisdictions that want to bring industrial lands inside, but no one's ever used it before. In fact, in that room with all the smart people that have been through many cycles of the UGR process, we all sat together when we learned from Ted Reed that that process was available to folks. And so we think that's great that that opportunity exists. It allows us to be nimble, right, and flexible and move when a jurisdiction is interested in making the change. But if we don't know about the program and we're the people doing the work, that's pretty stunning, right? That means a lot of people don't know about it. I think Andy mentioned it in his presentation before, but Aaron was sitting at the table with us. We were all like, what? What's going on? We can do what? So that's a new thing. It was created in the I think it was, sorry, he's lost me now. It was created in the late 2000s. Hold on. 2010. So it's been around for a while. No one's ever used it. We might want to. So there's a thing there that we acknowledged and could get some help from Metro on. Recommendation 3. So this is a little wonky as well, but this really came up from Washington County. They've had a lot of growth in their jurisdiction and a lot of cities, right, that have done UGB expansions like Tigard. Andy was just mentioning that. Well, Title 11, as Andy was saying, requires jurisdictions to do a concept plan before they ask for a UGB expansion. But then after the concept plan is approved and the land's brought inside the UGB, they go through a comprehensive planning process. And this can be iterative. Understand there's value in that. But at times that both of those processes can be extremely expensive and there can be a lack of alignment. Sometimes from the time the UGB expansion happens to getting through the comprehensive planning process, a lot of things can change. And I understand there's a lot of political pressures and a lot of things going on, but it does seem duplicative. And it seems like we're spending millions and millions of dollars doing the same work over and over again. Maybe there's a way to streamline that. Also, Washington County is quick to point out that everyone's on the same page with the concept plan before land comes in the UGB. They have to. Everyone has to sign off, right? We're all good with this. But then some things can be lost in translation, like maybe a major road that needs to be there to support development. That's happened in, I think, 2 of the recent expansions in Washington County that are tied up in lawsuits and things. The city is saying, well, we don't actually want that road. And the county is saying, if that road's not there, we're going to have problems carrying the traffic now and in the future. So that's something that can get lost in translation that could potentially be streamlined through an updated process for Title 11. Recommendation 4 that we had is really about developing and adopting a grading and tiering system for land. Andy had a great map on Title 4 lands, like what's regionally significant industrial land. One of the challenges that we see is there's not a lot of organization and collaboration around showing what lands are available and what level of readiness are they at. And there's a lot of great examples across the region. I think up in Vancouver, Washington, that area, Clark County just put together a great tool. You can go on there, you can see the parcels themselves, you can click on it, you can see how big they are, how many owners there are, what the utilities look like to them, the things that businesses want to see if they're considering relocating or opening something up in the area. We don't have anything like that in this area. Some efforts have been there in the past, but nothing ever came to fruition, or if things did, they haven't been updated. So we really want to see a grading and tiering system and some kind of an online tool so that it's available both for us all to be on the same page about it, but also for businesses who potentially may be interested in coming in to be able to look at that and use it as a tool. And it's a living thing, right? We can update it, it can change and grow, but it's a place where we can collaborate. Another recommendation from the group, and this one is pokey. Someone mentioned partisan concerns earlier. Strong messaging from private sector partners to encourage surplus land supply for industrial. Industrial land takes a long time to come online. It needs a lot of thinking, thoughtful planning. It needs a lot of infrastructure and time. That all of those things take away from certainty, right? When we don't have the infrastructure, when we don't have the land inside the UGB, and that really discourages private sector from investing. So a real interest in seeing some changes to allow more than a 20-year land supply for industrial land because it takes so long to come online. Recommendation 5 is to think about a forward-looking market-guided methodology when modeling growth. And this gets a little wonky again, but we're really thinking about instead of planning for a future that we could be okay with or planning for a future that we think we're going to get, it would be wonderful if we could create a pathway to planning for a future that we hope to strive for as if we get some economic development interventions in place. And I won't go much more deeply in depth here. We will be going more in depth at MTAC and also at MPAC later this month, but just that shift to being able to create space to be striving for a future that we want. We've heard in the past, I've heard a lot of people talking about we're planning for a future we don't want because we're kind of backing into it based on population trends and growth trends in business across the US. We want to be able to plan for a more optimistic future and hold space for economic development interventions. Recommendation 6. All right, so Metro does a lot of things. And nobody wants an extra meeting to go to for no reason. So I want to say that out loud right now. I think we're all probably thinking it. And there's not a space in our region where all of the jurisdictional partners and private sector partners can come together like we did in the work group that WEA created. Metro has had some attempts at that in the past and with good results, but they kind of fell apart with staff changes and changing priorities over the years. So we would love to see Metro convene a table that centers the voices of business and industry, but also has public sector partners there, focusing on economic development, but very specifically focusing on industrial land supply and industrial readiness. We'd also like to see that table be a part of forming or creating a report that outlines economic realities and opportunities throughout the 3 counties. There's not a place where that really happens. There is growth projection, and Aaron and Andy could speak more to this. There's a lot of that analysis that goes on during the urban growth report process, but there is no specific study that talks about economic realities and opportunities. And we'd love to see a study, a report that goes along with the urban growth report that really talks specifically about that. And that will help us address that mismatch that I've been talking about. So just wrapping up, where are we going from here? We've done a lot of work and a lot of analysis. We've been having a lot of great conversations. We'll be presenting this at MTAC today, as I mentioned. We'll be at MPAC on the 25th. Be bringing a lot of my friends from the work group with me to that MPAC meeting. Elizabeth will be there as well. So there'll be a lot more folks presenting on this. I'll be pretty quiet on this when we get to that point. And then we're hoping to present the memo that we created to Metro Council and have a conversation at Metro Council. We haven't scheduled that just yet. We're intending to continue to work with Metro Council and all the staff at Metro to create an economic development strategy and industrial lands specific strategy that includes land use modernization efforts and site readiness considerations. So we'll still continue showing up and working with our partners. And this is the beginning of a conversation. It's really exciting that there is so much interest at all levels in economic development and the health of our economy, or lack thereof right now. We really want to be a part of creating the momentum toward a brighter future for for our region, for all of us, and for all of us in Clackamas County. So this is the beginning of a much longer conversation. I'm happy to take any questions if you have them for me. And feel free to reach out afterwards also if you have questions or want to engage on this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Folks who don't have any questions for Jamie? Jamie, I'm just curious, is there any talk about, I mean, kind of what we were just talking about with Andy and Aaron too, like first recommendation, working with Metro to address the buildable lands inventory, how that ties in kind of, it's the same as the housing conversation a little bit, and do you guys have any talk about that? These pieces all seem to kind of fit together, similar issues.
Yes, we have talked about that. We've had a lot of wonky methodology conversations through this because that's where we all end up, right? Because there's a lot of nuts and bolts that make this system and this process work. So we've had a lot of conversations about that. And I'm actually here to give you the update on MTAC as well. And we've been talking about some of those pieces at the recent MTAC meeting. So I'll just share, we talked about the 2040 Growth Concept Report Card at the last MTAC meeting, as well as something called the Distributed Forecast Work Program and the Functional Plan Compliance Report. A lot of wonkiness, but all of those pieces that kind of weave together to create this model are being looked at right now for the next UGR. We're starting that conversation really early, and we're having a lot of those specific discussions as part of those pieces. So especially, for example, with the distributed forecast work, and you referenced this before, Mayor Buck, we have to look at what is the forecast and where are those folks going to live, kind of split that up. And that is work that is done in partnership with all of the jurisdictions. So that is an ongoing conversation, and there's push and pull in that discussion about how much population goes where. So yes, we're having those conversations. It's wonky and somewhat segmented, but we're discussing all of those things, and it does tie closely with all the ONA, the outcomes from the ONA work, right? So it's all one big conversation. Everything is connected, and it's very complicated and nuanced.
Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
Jamie. Sounds great. Mayor Milch, please go ahead.
We had a presentation last month from a group on the supportive housing, and one of the things that they had in their report were recommendations of some very good economic indicators, a whole list of things that were measurable, that you could keep track of, and you could kind of judge your progress. So your recommendation to create a new table that focuses on these regional goals, I think if you've got economists in your group, you've got people who can say, how many cranes are up in the region? How many, what's the unemployment rate? How many new jobs have been created? All those kinds of numbers could give you a chance to really judge your progress. The other comment I wanted to make, a lot of the talk about industrial land, we read a lot about certain land uses that seem to be disproportionate in the amount of land required, the amount of energy required, and the amount of water being used. And that's way out of proportion to the number of actual jobs that are being created by these things. Now, everybody wants those data centers out there so we can turn on our phone and the Google lady can tell us how to get where we're going in our car. But are there also jobs that require small amounts of land, maybe built up vertically, that create a lot of jobs, maybe even people working from home, that are good for our economy but don't require as much land? And are we putting as much energy into developing that kind of land use and job creation?
Thank you, Mayor Milch. Great question. And I will start, but I'm sure Andy and Aaron probably have something to add here. I know that is certainly a focus for us and for everyone, right? We aren't just focusing on one type of company or sector. We really want to create all opportunities and remove barriers. I've been hearing a lot of conversation about AI and how AI may be one of the parts of the future for our metro region. That is one of those sectors that you are referencing that doesn't need a lot of space, can create a lot of jobs. So I think there's a lot of interest in exploring those opportunities. I think there's also, from the land side, just a deep desire to understand, what do we have? Is it actually suitable to support the market, whether it be for AI or one of those intense uses like you're talking about, or a larger manufacturing use? What do we have? What is its status? And then do we need more or do we have enough? I think that's really like at a very basic level, that's the conversation we're trying to have. And it's much more complicated and nuanced than that. But I think that's the deep desire so that we can accommodate all those different types of businesses. And maybe some of the land that's being counted that's in Portland, a lot of them were 2-acre parcels. Maybe some of those could be suitable for those types of uses. But we need to understand what if they have barriers to development, or what the challenges are, because a lot of it's been sitting there for many, many years and hasn't been developed. Aaron, please help me.
That was great. I just want to add on a little plug for the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. You're going to hear it referred to as SEDS. If you haven't already heard about SEDS, but I referred to this in our presentation. Greater Portland Inc., GPI leads this in partnership. Metro is part of the partnership. I think the timing is particularly wonderful that this strategy is coming together right now, because that strategy will identify target industries. And that's so important, I think, to know what kind of economic growth potential we have in this region, where we should put our resources, and what different land and other electricity and job creation needs these different industries have. It could really help us all get focused. So that's why I'm excited about it.
Andy.
Yeah, I was just going to add a different flavor here. Economic development work and land use is so much more challenging than thinking about housing and population growth. We are very good at forecasting population growth and then work to figure out how do we accommodate the right type of housing for that. Everyone is very bad at economic forecasting. I'll just share a story. I was chief of staff to our previous council president. We flew to Germany to meet with the head of Solar World because back in 2011, we were anticipating 8,000 solar panel manufacturing jobs. China did some kind of subsidy, and it ruined the market for investing in domestic solar panel manufacturing. Which is not to say that that trip to Germany, that all that work to try to identify places that we could manufacture panels here was bad work. Just things changed in the market. And so I think our challenge going forward is how do we, again, evolve the land use system to allow us to be a bit more speculative. And I say that word without judgment. There needs to be the ability to look forward to what we hope to have. But then how do we protect those lands for those purposes? And I think a lot of what we saw early in the 2010s was land in that map with all the blue zones, getting storage units and other things built on it that were not what we had hoped for and not why we converted that land from a rural use to an urban use. So the balance between that ability to be thoughtful and speculative in all the best senses of the term, have a plan with our SEDS, have a plan at the state level, and then identify the land uses that we want and need, and then protect that land for those purposes. That's the balance, I think, of steps that we need to take. We're not quite there yet.
Thanks for tying that all together for us, Andy. And Jamie, thank you for that presentation. Can we move in real quick to the MTAC update?
Yes, I can shared a couple of things we worked on last month. So the 2040 Growth Concept Report Card, talking about some of those areas that already came inside the urban growth boundary, and some of them that haven't developed. We discussed that, the Functional Plan Compliance Report, and then again, the Distributed Forecast Work Program. In February, that's today, here right after this meeting ends, Laura and I will be jumping on. We'll hear about those transit projects and the LPAs that'll be going into the RTP amendment. We'll have an update for the group on the Sunrise project. We'll also hear about the Future Vision Commission, and then we'll do the WA Industrial Lands presentation that you all just saw. So that is what we're heading into today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to do a check-in on the MPAC membership. Commissioner Samus?
Yeah, we were notified by Metro that apparently back when we selected our MPAC rep, we did not submit a letter, or maybe we did and it got lost. It doesn't really matter. They're asking for a written letter from C4, and it's the city position in particular that is up, and of course that is the province of the cities, not the county or the special districts or the CPOs here today. But Mayor Buck, I know you are leading the charge here today, so I just want to just put that out there that we have this responsibility to either submit the letter for Brett Sherman or whatever you all want to do. So it's and that's my role to bring it to your attention and hand it off to the cities to decide if they want to submit that letter. Jamie, did I miss anything?
Uh, just one little nuance. The seat that Commissioner Sherman currently holds is for the Impact Other Cities, which is for all metro cities who are not Lake Oswego or Oregon City.
Okay, Counselor Callahan.
Thanks, Mayor Buck. I also just wanted to, we go through this process as a nomination process, I've talked with Councilor Sherman. He's still interested in holding that seat, and so I would nominate him to continue to hold that seat. He has the vigor to continue to serve. So,
Okay, and I see Mayor Milch. And Counselor Barry, does that sound good to you as well? Okay. Yeah, Councilor Sherman's been great. He recently chaired MPAC, very engaged member of the group. So we kind of have consent. Can we just show some? Seems like there's consensus. We don't need to vote on this, do we?
I don't think so. If you just want to put your thumbs up on the screen. Alrighty, thank you, cities.
Okay.
I will submit that letter to renew his membership.
Thank you, and thanks, Councilor Sherman. I see it down there. Okay. All right. That was the last thing on the agenda. Look at that. So if there's nothing else, we will adjourn. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much.